started recording earlier. Good afternoon, everyone. We're in the second session of the last day or fifth day of this secondary and senior secondary teachers of English training program. And today we have with us Ms. Narji Boruah. Ma'am is assistant professor in Government Women's College, Tinsuka, and ma'am has worked in this area. That has been her area of expertise, and has worked in this area of inclusivity, inclusive education. And of course, the Deepa ma'am from University of Hyderabad has also helped her a lot, and she's also writing this area of both Narji ma'am and Shri Deepa ma'am. And Narji ma'am is writing one module also, in fact, two modules on the learners' diversity and inclusivity. So we thought of having a discussion on how inclusivity should be brought into a school system, and how we should be careful when it comes to the learners' diversity, and how we should try to address the need of every learner in the class. So to elaborate more on the topic, I welcome Narji ma'am, and I request her to present on the topic inclusive learners' diversity and inclusive education. Over to you, Narji ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll start my presentation. Let me share the screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, visible, madam.
Yes. The topic is inclusive language learning. Inclusion. This is the need of the hour. We all know this. NEP, it says inclusion. Everywhere inclusivity, you will find this word. Each and every one of us, at least we have heard this word. We are familiar to this word. In this session, we will discuss, we will understand what is inclusion, what is inclusive language learning. Let's start with this quotation. We can teach our children to flap their wings, but conditions have to be just right for them to fly. The prime objective of today's session is to learn how to create such conditions for our children, for our students, so that they can fly. The content includes inclusion, different difficulties, accessibility, Udl Framework, which is universal design of learning, then equity-friendly instruction and assessment, assistive technological tools, and inclusive classroom. Now, before we begin, I have a question. Since we have already come to more lecture, it will be a kind of discussion. The first question I have, the first issue that we are going to discuss. Let's imagine a classroom with different learning needs. And please tell me, unmute yourself, tell me what needs are coming to your mind. One of needs enough. If I begin, I will say that inspiration is what children or students need in classroom. They need support. There are many teachers here. Could you please add? The different needs of students that we encounter in class.
I think, ma'am, it's a familiarity with the students, actually.
Yes.
Familiarity with the students. We should just try to be familiar with the students so that we may just know their problems and difficulties.
Yes. Any other?
Madam, encouragement is also necessary for them.
Yes. Excellent. Encouragement is also required. This is one of the basic need, or one of the most important need that students require in classroom. If we encourage students, they are motivated. They are encouraged, they are motivated to learn new things, and they understand things in a much better way. Now let's see what is inclusion. Inclusion, in simple terms, it means including each and every learner in the classroom, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, gender, or abilities. What NEP emphasizes is to inculcate inclusive educational structure and an inclusive environment in our school education system. And how can we build this inclusive environment in the school? It is through infrastructural support and by making corresponding changes in the curriculum, in the materials, such as respect for all persons, empathy, tolerance, human rights, gender equality, global citizenship, each and everything. If we consider each and every domain of a student in a classroom, then we say that that classroom is an inclusive classroom, and that is what NEP focuses. In the context of English language classroom, we need to take into account many things. It's not like the other classrooms because English is a language. And in language classrooms, it is not necessarily English, but in all language classrooms, the inclusion or the inclusivity concept is a sensitive case or a sensitive thing in an inclusive classroom. For example, when we use the language in the class, at the very beginning of the class, if we say that students, you are going to learn today this topic, instead of saying you are going to learn, we should start saying that we are going to learn. That itself is the first step to include the students in the classroom. Now, in the context of English language class, the term inclusion should take into account all possible range of diversities. It should not be confined to just cognitive or physical disability, or you can say difficulties. Rather than disability, I would say difficulties. Whereas it includes other diversities like social, cultural, economic, etc. In a language classroom, a learner may feel excluded if his or her mother tongue is not referred in the class. That may be also a concern for the teacher and the students. If only one mother tongue is referred to in the class every time, if it is a multilingual class, then the students belonging to other mother tongues whose mother tongues are not referred to, they might feel excluded. And that might be against inclusion or the inclusive policy of education. That's why these things should be taken into account in an English language classroom to make it inclusive. And here it's in the slide, it says that the use of language should be inclusive because it creates the sense of belongingness. The words and expressions that we use in the classroom should not discriminate any learner or hurt the emotions and sentiments of the people in the classroom. People here means the students in the class. NEP says that the students belonging to different caste like SC, ST, OBC, MOBC, etc., they should be included. And when they are included in the classroom, or how can we include them? If we are including them, we should take into account this thing that we are not discriminating them by referring something which might hurt their emotions and sentiments. Now, these are the main acts which promote inclusion or inclusive education. Salman Ka Act, Right to Education Act, which you all know, Right to Persons with Disabilities Act 2016. I won't go in details of these acts, I assume that you all know. Here, the Right to Education Act 2009, it was enacted in 4th August. It implies diversity in education. It supported the zero rejection policy. It says that all the students have the right to have full-time elementary education. Then Persons with Disabilities Act, it was enacted in 2016, and it ensured that all the PWDs, that is persons with disabilities, should enjoy equal rights. And the 21 disability, the term I am using as it was used in this Act, that is Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The 21 disabilities are low vision, leprosy cured, locomotor disability, intellectual disability, specific learning disabilities, etc. Now, why this Salman Ka Act is important? The first act that I have mentioned in the slide is because in this conference, first, it was a conference which was held in Spain where 92 governments and 25 international organizations gathered, and we had a discussion on various issues related to education. And in that conference, it was started, or it was the older people there came to a common consensus that the students with different learning abilities, with different disabilities, be it physical, social, emotional, or any other conditions, they should be accommodated, or they should come to the mainstream education system. Now, before we move on further, let's understand two key concepts. These are difficulty and labeling. Difficulty, this is a term which we are using for disability also. Instead of the term disability, we are using difficulty, because disability, somewhere we found that it might hurt the emotion and sentiments of the people having difficulties, and that's why we will be using the term difficulty, which means challenges and limitations that hinder in the development of language skills. If we take into account the word disability, we will find that suppose a student has locomotor disability, he or she is facing a limitation or a challenge, and hence we are using the term difficulty instead of disability. If we understand the definition or the meaning, the word difficulty better suits instead of disability. The next concept is labeling, where students are categorized. In a class, you are all teachers, you know that in a class there are different level students, and suppose if a student, he or she is unable to do something, he or she is categorized usually that he cannot do this or she cannot do this because of the fact that he or she cannot move, she has a broken limb or something. In that case, we say that that student is labeled. That is what labeling is. It means categorizing learners. These are the various difficulties which we usually come across in classrooms. As teachers, you might have come across at least one difficulty. Now, could you, anyone tell me, or some of you please tell me, what are the difficulties out of this which you encounter in class? Or do you have any student who has one of these difficulties or more than two of these difficulties? Be it hearing difficulty, visual difficulty, locomotor, dyslexia, autism, intellectual difficulty, or learning disability, or difficulty, you can say. Did you come across any student? If you have not come across, it's fine, just say that you haven't come across. It's Pratima Pandey ma'am, okay, language difficulty. Difficult to see the screen, so for that reason I have to remove my presentation and see. Okay, language difficulty. Is there anyone else? Okay, cultural difficulty.
Madam, we find students of visual difficulties also.
Okay, visual difficulty. Yes, there are students with this kind of difficulties in the classroom. Some of us may find these difficulties, or students having these difficulties, or in certain classrooms, these difficulties are not visible, because until and unless it is a physical disability or difficulty, it's difficult to find out. For example, cultural difficulty or cultural differences, that is invisible. We have to find it as teachers. Whereas when it comes to locomotor or when it comes to dyslexia, somewhere it is physical, so it is visible. We can find out when we see or when we teach the learners. Coming to the next slide. The learning characteristics, these are dependent on what the degree or level of difficulty. Learning characteristics, you all know that students in a class, each and every one of the students in the class, they might have different learning characteristics, or a certain group of students in a particular class might have similar learning characteristics. Okay. Learners may have a certain kind of difficulty or may not be similar in grabbing the information that is provided in the class. As teachers, what we need to know is that these learners receive, process, store, and respond to information in their own way. That is what we need to understand in an inclusive classroom. We have to understand the learners instead of expecting them to come to us. We should go to them. It actually solves the major task involved in the process of delivering the content if we know the learning characteristics of the students. Now, suppose there is a student who never responds in class. Even if she or he is called out by his or her name, she is reluctant to speak. She never speaks, or he never speaks in the class. Why do you think so? What kind of difficulty the student is facing, or why is it so that this particular student is not responding? Could you please answer? If you find any student, I think in almost every class we have one or two students who won't respond to the teacher. So why do you think so? Yes, one is hesitation. Good, Archana, madam. Yes, because of
Maybe
hesitation.
he or she is not understanding our language.
Pardon?
Not understanding the question we asked.
Yes, not understanding the question. Feeling shy. And deafness, yes. Hearing difficulty, lack of confidence. Yes. These are the issues that we might assume, or we see that when a student never responds in class, he or she is either shy, hesitant, or maybe that student might not have understood our question. Now, in such a case, what should we do? Because if we don't take into account that student, suppose if we think that that is only one student in class, if he or she never responds, to kya hoga? Kuch to nahi hoga, only one student, right? We may think like that. One or two among us might think like that. But that classroom won't be taken as an inclusive language classroom if we don't take into account even if one particular student is not responding. We will have to make that student respond in the class by understanding his or her need, be it for hesitation, be it for language difference, any reason. We should have to find out and then include that particular learner in the class to make the classroom an inclusive classroom. Now, management and organization of inclusive classroom. How can we manage, or how can we organize an inclusive classroom or a classroom to make it inclusive? What are the things that we should take into account in order to manage and properly organize everything? The first thing is the whole course or syllabus should be communicated to the learners at the starting of the session and after definite intervals during the whole session, which means, in other words, that if we deliver the whole course or syllabus, if we make it clear to the students, then they will know what is their progression, what are the content that has been covered so far. If they know these things, if they can the progress of the syllabus, then we can expect that they are learning in the classroom, or else we cannot take this thing that they are learning in the classroom. For that reason, the whole syllabus or the whole course, regular intervals starting from the beginning, should be made clear to the students. And information of the course and the plan of lessons should be given to the learners. It is not that the teachers will give the lesson plan, but when he starts the lesson, he or she will say that today we are going to learn this topic. And at the end of the class, we will learn these things. And even at the end of the class, we can call one or two students, or we can ask them to volunteer to write the gist of the class in key points, so that each and every learner understands what is taught in the classroom. The next is regarding the objects that are there in the classroom. For example, in mostly urban areas, we find overhead projectors, chalkboards. It's available in almost all places. Electronic gadgets, headphones, earphones, computers, all this, if it is there, it should be placed in proper place so that it is accessible to all the learners. It is not necessary that every classroom will have overhead projector. In extreme remote rural areas, we won't find computers overhead projectors. But as teachers, we should take the responsibility to find alternative ways to deliver our course content, so that the learners are not excluded from getting what is there in the course. Because if we teach only a part of the syllabus, or if we don't deliver the content properly, then one or two students, or maybe the whole class, will be discriminated from the other students living in other parts. So when it comes to the projectors or the other gadgets used in the classroom, it should be placed in proper order, and so it is accessible to all the learners. Next is students learn language, the skills of language, which you already know through pair and group work. Why pair and group work is necessary? Because they are not hesitant. What you all have mentioned, hesitant. Students are hesitant. They are reluctant to speak because of their shyness. They are shy. In front of whom they are shy? Mainly in front of the teacher and those who are fluent in English. But if there is another student who is not that proficient in English, he or she or that particular student won't be shy. In that case, if there is a pair and group activity, the students will engage themselves in speaking, and thereby we can enhance, or we can gear up their speaking skill. Similarly, we can give them activities related to reading. They can read together and learn the difficult meanings, thereby increasing their vocabulary. And what we should know here is that the learners, in spite of any difficulty or ability, will have the zeal to interact in English, because they will feel free to engage themselves in an activity that they enjoy. So activity, and this activity should be given through parent group work. Then another important aspect is sitting arrangement. One of our teachers already told that she has a student with, or maybe there is a student in her class who has vision impairment. Now, sitting arrangements, if there is a student with locomotor difficulty, or with vision difficulty, or you can say hearing difficulty, sitting arrangements we should look into, or we should give importance to the sitting arrangements, because if suppose they sit at the last bench of the class, they won't be able to get what is being taught in the class. For that reason, sitting arrangement is a must in terms of management and organization of inclusive classroom. Next is, this is in connection with point 2,
Madam,
that is
screen is invisible, ma'am. Screen is invisible, ma'am.
it invisible for everyone?
No, madam,
Yes,
it
ma'am.
is
Screen
visible,
is not
madam.
visible.
It's visible, ma'am.
Screen is not visible.
It is visible,
Okay,
ma'am.
please text if it is
It's
not
visible,
visible
ma'am.
for everyone. Is it visible?
Ma'am,
No,
it's
not
visible.
visible.
It's visible,
No,
ma'am.
ma'am.
This is not
Okay,
visible, ma'am.
so
No.
for those of you who are unable to see or you're facing network issue maybe,
Okay, ma'am.
Arun Dwivedi sir, is it visible?
No,
Not
ma'am.
visible, not visible.
But it's visible, man. I think
Nishita
we
Gupta
are
ma'am,
able to just watch it.
Nishita Gupta
Ma'am, the
ma'am, is
screen
it
is not
visible?
visible.
I
Nishita
don't
Gupta
know
ma'am,
about the others, but it's visible. I think. It's clearly visible.
Management and Organization of Inclusive Classroom, that is what I am presenting right now.
Ma'am, please stop sharing and share again.
Okay,
Not visible, madam.
okay, I will reshare.
It is not visible, ma'am.
Okay, now I have stopped, I will reshare.
आपकी स्टॉप हो गई क्या सर?
Yes, I have stopped for some time because it was not visible for everyone.
It's visible now, ma'am. It's
Okay,
visible now.
okay, I have restarted. Okay, management and organization of inclusive classroom. We are at the last point of this slide, management and organization of inclusive classroom. This point, the stakeholders should support and facilitate the teachers. This point is in connection with point 2, that is the objects in the classroom or the materials
It is not
in
visible,
the
ma'am.
classroom.
Ma'am, again it is not visible. It is also echoing also.
Yeah,
Echoing
visible,
also, ma'am.
ma'am. Narji, ma'am, you please continue. It is visible.
It is
You are
invisible,
sharing
ma'am.
your entire screen, ma'am. Yes, it is visible, ma'am. Please continue.
Okay, the stakeholders, they should support and facilitate the teachers to create the learning environment. See, each and every classroom may not have all these gadgets, the electronic gadgets. So
Sorry, ma'am,
the
you are not
people,
visible.
those who are there, the stakeholders, they should, what should they do is that they should work together to create a resource room so that the learners with difficulties, they can learn with the help of those aids or with the help of those resources in the classroom. This is mainly for those classrooms where we don't find the gadgets or the overhead computers, earphones, headphones, etc. Now, availability and accessibility. What is availability and what is accessibility? In inclusive language classrooms or in any inclusive classroom, these two terms, availability and accessibility, are a must. We should understand these two terms. What is the meaning of availability and accessibility? I won't ask that, but I want to know from you all, do you find any difference between availability and accessibility? Is there any difference?
Yes, there is a difference. There is a difference that availability, if something is available, maybe internet is available everywhere, but how many
Yes.
of them have the knowledge to access to it? So that is the
Yes,
difference.
yes.
Many things are available, but they are not accessible.
Yes. Oh, who is speaking? Yes,
Vijay
who
Verma
gave
from
this?
Government Model
Yes,
Secondary School, sir.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, Vijay Verma, sir. Yes, in terms of materials, what happens is that materials may be available, but it may not be accessible to the learners in the classroom. Now we will understand this with the help of an example. For example, a teacher may provide a video lecture to the learners in a class. if there are students in the class who face difficulty in hearing, they would not be able to access the video lecture until there are captions, or if there are other tools to assist the learners, then only it will become accessible, or else it will only be available to that particular student or those group of learners who face hearing difficulty. Did you get my point? The difference between availability and accessibility. Materials may be available, but it may not be accessible to all the learners in the classroom, especially if there are learners with difficulties. Did you all get the point? You can answer in
Yes,
the
sir.
comment section.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, for an inclusive classroom, we should confirm that materials are available. At the same time, we should confirm the accessibility of the materials. Information and materials may be available, but the learners would not be able to access the information and materials if they are not provided in a way that is accessible to them. This is what we need to remember. Next is, to ensure equity in instruction, we should consider the following points. We should know, or we should keep in mind, that learners have their own pace of learning, which you already know as teachers, that each and every learner in the classroom have their own pace of learning. But here, when there are students with difficulties, for example, there are 5 students with hearing difficulty, or there are 5 students or 6 students with vision difficulty. Now, we should not take into account all these 5 students in one particular, who fall in one particular group, or we can say that they face one particular difficulty as a homogeneous group. Among 5 students who face vision difficulty or hearing difficulty, they have their own pace of learning individually. We should not take this thing, or we should not take this concept in our mind that each and every learner having the same difficulty will have the same pace of learning. They are not a homogeneous whole. Please remember this, that they are not a homogeneous whole. Instead, they have their own individual pace of learning. We should accept each and every learner in the classroom, and through modified instructions, learners can become independent of their learning. Modified instructions, as teachers, you all modify instructions. For example, you are teaching a lesson. We will come to an example in the coming slides. If you are teaching a lesson and the students are unable to get, for example, if they don't respond, you understand that if they are not having any difficulty, they might not have understood because of language. In that case, what we do is that we modify the instruction. We say it in a different way. We come up to their level and we deliver the course content. In that way, what we do is that we encourage independency in their learning. Then the plan of the lessons should be aligned with the learning styles of the learners and learning outcomes. The lesson plan, as we have already understood that there should be plan of lesson, which you always do before going to class. We prepare our lesson plans, we go to our respective mentors, or we go to the principal and get our lesson plans signed. But before preparing our lesson plans, we should know that the learners have different learning styles, and we as teachers should know the learning styles of the students that we are dealing with. Then the instructions should be clear and comprehensible for each and every learner. If required, we should repeat. We should give the information numerous times or instructions repeated times so that it is clear and comprehensible, so that they understand. Then, to ensure equity in instruction, the materials which are used to deliver the contents or the deliver the lessons should be accessible, or else it will remain only available to the learners. Now, what is equity-friendly assessment? After instructing the learners, we all assess them, we evaluate them. Equity-friendly assessment, when there are learners with difficulties or different learning needs in a classroom, we should take into account that the learners' abilities and difficulties should be given importance. If required, we should give them flexible options in terms of submitting their assignments or in terms of giving their exams, we should give them multiple options. Then feedback of the learner should be taken at the end of the assessment process. Feedback of the learner should be taken for the purpose of the teachers so that they can modify the assessment process if required. Again, the instructions, learning strategies, and assessment type, it should be aligned. The instruction, whatever is given, it should be aligned with the learning strategies, which we have learned in the previous slide. And then the assessment. What we taught, we should assess that particular content which we have delivered, which we have given to the students. Or else, if it is not aligned, then obviously the score of the students won't be up to the mark. For that reason, the second point, the instructions, the learning strategies, and the assessment type should be aligned. Now, as teachers, we should know that there is a framework, Udl Framework. This framework, the full name is Universal Design of Learning. It is grounded in 3 principles. And when we are going to the language classroom, we should follow these 3 principles. Or when we are making our lesson plans, we should keep these 3 principles in mind. The first one is multiple means of representation. Here, multiple means of representation, it means that a variety of methods should be used to present information, to provide a range of means to support the learners. And action and expression. Would anyone like to comment on this multiple means of action and expression? What it means by multiple means of action and expression, or how can we encourage learners in the classroom to participate by providing multiple means of action and expression? I think there are science teachers here. Those who are interested in science, teaching science also, or the concepts of science. Is there anyone who is interested in teaching science concepts, or those who draw in science concepts while teaching English in the class? Please comment if there is anyone who is interested in bringing in concepts related to science when they teach English. Okay, there is no one, that's fine. Now, let me tell if no one is responding then. Okay, I need to repeat the question. So what is meant by multiple means of action and expression? Can you assume, if you are not aware of Udl framework, can you assume what is meant by multiple means of action and expression? Expression we all know, right? When we give to the learner something in different modes, we express it in different ways so that the learners can understand. Can anyone assume what is meant by multiple means of action and expression?
Multiple means of expression and extent means we are giving our teachings through gestures, through our face, to our eyes, verbal, non-verbal teachings, like we take in science subject also, photosynthesis and others activities, science activities. So we use multiple extent and expressions for expressions there.
Yes,
Through gesture and
yes.
face and through body reflection.
Yes, thank you, Poonam ma'am. This is what is meant by action and expression. Poonam ma'am has well explained the principle of action and expression. Action and expression, when we explain certain concepts, we use gestures. And there is another answer from Nishita Gupta ma'am, I think uses of different strategies. Yes, using different strategies. When we are saying strategy, this action comes into, or use of gestures come into. And expression also comes into play. We provide learners with alternative ways to act skillfully and demonstrate what they know. We take into account what they know and then we teach them. That is what multiple means of action and expression. Actually, we provide them alternative ways so that they can understand the concept. And next is multiple means of engagement. Multiple means of engagement means tapping into learners' interest by offering choices of content and tools, motivating learners by offering adjustable levels of challenge. This means that we engage the learners by providing them numerous opportunities, by tapping into what is their interest. As teachers, when we teach students, we know them, we understand them, and when we understand them, we know their interest, and this becomes easy to engage them. We can tap into their interest and provide them content or deliver the content as per their interest, and thereby encourage interaction and engagement. This is what Udl framework is grounded on. And when we are going to a language classroom, we take into account this three, or we should take into account multiple means of representation, multiple means of action and expression, multiple means of engagement. Now, there is a task for you all. This is just a 2 or 3 minute task. Landscape of the Soul. This is one of the lessons from class 11 NCERT textbook. Is there anyone who has taught this chapter, Landscape of the Soul? Class 11. Landscape of the Soul. Is there any teacher who have come across this?
Yes, ma'am, I have
Yes.
taught.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Vijay sir, you have taught. Okay, let's go to this slide and read the first paragraph of Landscape of the Soul. Vijay Tiwari sir, could you please read out what is there in the slide, the first paragraph? Others, please listen.
Ma'am, actually PPT is not visible yet.
Okay,
It's
okay.
blurred, ma'am. It's blurred.
Okay, it's blurred. Let me send in the text message.
It's not visible, ma'am, since
Okay, check your in-call messages.
Now it is visible, ma'am. Now
Okay.
I think this is visible. Yes.
Okay,
Again
any one of you can read
It
the
is in check box section.
yes,
Nothing is visible. That can be read.
it's
A
in
wonderful old tale is a wonderful old tale is told about the painter Wu Dozai who lived in the 8th century. His last painting was a landscape commissioned by the Tang Emperor Zhongzong to decorate a palace wall. The master had hidden his work behind a screen so only the emperor would see it. For a long while, the emperor admired the wonderful scene, discovering forests, high mountains, waterfalls, clouds floating in an immense sky, men on hilly paths, birds in flight. Look, sire, said the painter, in this cave. That is what was visible, ma'am.
yes, at the foot of the mountain dwells a spirit. The painter clapped his hands and the entrance to the cave opened. The inside is splendid beyond anything words can convey. Please let us show your majesty the way. The painter entered the cave, but the entrance closed behind him. And before the astonished emperor could move or utter a word, the painting had vanished from the wall. Not a trace of Wu Dao's brush was left, and the artist was never seen again in this world. Thank you, sir. Now we have read this first paragraph of the chapter Landscape of the Soul. Let's assume that in our class, there is a student who face limitations in seeing, or who has vision impairment, or who face difficulty in looking at objects, looking at things. Now, what are the concerns as teachers we should have before teaching this text? Please comment. I'll repeat my question. Suppose there is a student who has vision difficulty or who is visually impaired. If there is a student or if there are students in our class who has vision difficulty, what are the things that we should take into account before teaching this text? You can comment or you can unmute yourselves and then speak. The paragraph is in the chat box. Please see.
If if there is a student with vision impairment, we can read it aloud, and that difficulty can be sorted out.
Yes, that is in terms of reading skill. Yes, sir. Vijay Tiwari, sir, what you said is correct. We can read aloud for them. This also goes for students who have hearing impairment or who face difficulty in hearing. We can take into account what you have said for hearing students with hearing difficulty as well. If we read aloud, suppose if the text is available only in print, if we read aloud, it will be accessible to the learners. Not every school or not every institution will have the facility or will be in a position to provide e-books to the learners, or if e-books are provided, the learners may not be financially sound to bring mobiles, tablets or laptops to the classroom and access the material. For example, let's take that this is a printed text. And as Vijay Tiwari sir already said, in that case, what we can do is that we can read out the text. Is there any other comment from other teachers? What else we should take into concern? Yes, Poonam ma'am, reading aloud. We should ask the students to feel the serenity by using their senses. Good, excellent, Nisa Gupta ma'am. We can do that as well. Give the summary of the lesson loudly. Yes.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, good afternoon, Puskar Singh
Ma'am,
sir.
ma'am. Actually, as per my thinking, if possible, some kind of model of landscape may be brought in the class, and the students who is having the vision impairment may be allowed to to touch that model and feel what kind of landscape it may be, like that.
Yes, I was expecting this answer before what Vijay Tiwari sir said. I was actually expecting this answer. We can take a model to the classroom of a landscape and then make the student touch, and through the use of tactile objects, the students will
Yes,
understand the concepts very well. That is what we know. Now,
can
the
do.
thing is that suppose there are occasions when we directly go to the classroom. Since we are experienced enough, most of us, I can say that we can directly go to the classroom, make an entry, and directly teach the text. In that case, we might not have a model with us, prepared model. In that case, let's refer to what we have learned in the starting of the discussion, that resources. We can prepare resources and keep it beforehand and bring it to the class when required. That is point one. Or else, point two, or the most easiest option or way is use our sense or use our intelligence when we are delivering this content. I would like to cite a real life example in a class where Dr. Sridipa, who is there, I suppose. Ma'am, are you there?
Yeah. I've also raised my hand.
Okay. Since I am sharing
Yeah,
my
go
screen.
ahead, go ahead.
Yes. This concept of waterfall, that is what I would like to refer to. Waterfall here, it is in this text, Landscape of the Soul. But in that occasion, the the class was on paragraph writing, and it was on something natural scenery or something like similar to that, and this word waterfall was used, and there was a visually impaired student who stood up and said that she had never seen a waterfall in her whole life, and that student was in her first semester of integrated BA course. That is not different, right? Class 11, 12 students and BA first semester students, not much difference. But whatever be the case, this.
Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am.
Pardon?
Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am. But how can it be practically possible with the how can it be practically be possible in same class
No, I'm not saying same class, but they have just completed class 12 and they have entered degree first semester, right? So there is not much age difference between them. Did you get my point, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So see, waterfall. Already sir has said that we can take models, but now in the case where we cannot prepare models when our schedules are hectic, then in such cases we can use our intelligence. That is what I was saying. And I was referring to a real life example which Dr. Sridipa did. And one student, she said that she had not seen waterfall in her whole life. What she did was that there was a water bottle in front of her. She took the water bottle and she sprinkled water on her face. Then she asked, "How do you feel?" She explained how she felt. Then Dr. Sridipa said that that is what, or that is how it feels when we stand near a waterfall. Waterfall, then she explained by touching her hand, and then she took her near the wall and she explained that
मैम
how the
मैम
length of
मैं
the
बोल सकती हूँ? मैम मैं बोलना चाह रही हूँ मैम, हम
yes.
उसको अगर वहाँ ले जा सकते हैं, पूल जहाँ पर फाउंटेन है, और वो फील कर सकती है जो बूंदे गिरती हैं, वहाँ ओस की बूंदे जो गिरती है, तो उससे वो फील कर सकते हैं मैम
हाँ
वाटरफॉल को।
हाँ
ऐसा नहीं
हाँ
कि
मैम,
उसको टच करके ही देख सकते हैं, तो वो फील जब करेगी ना तो नेचुरली उसको मतलब इमेजिन करेगी कि वाटरफॉल क्या होता
हाँ
है ना।
हम लोग वो कर सकते हैं, लेकिन क्लास में क्योंकि हम लोगों का 45 मिनट स्टिपुलेटेड टाइम होता है कि नहीं, इसलिए हम लोग क्या कर सकते हैं कि इंटेलिजेंस यूज करके वी कैन make them use their senses and make them understand what is a waterfall. This is just an example that I have cited or I'm bringing in to explain that how we can use our intelligence, because as I'm saying that we as teachers, we know how hectic our schedule is. It is not easy or possible in reality to make models and take to each and every classroom. In such cases or occasions, we can follow this kind of strategies and make the students understand to make the classroom inclusive. That is why I have referred to this text in order to explain or in order to make everyone know and understand that we, through the use of models as well and through the use of our intelligence in the class, we can make the language classroom inclusive. Now, coming to the last slide of today's presentation, what are the teaching strategies that we can follow to make the classroom teaching inclusive? This has been repeated numerous times. So the first point is interest of the learners. I would request Vavesh Sali, sir, to please read out the last slide. Are you there, sir, Vavesh Sali? Nishita Gupta, ma'am, would you read if Vavesh Sali, sir, is not there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Actually, no new PPT is there, but the same what I have to means read, the same old one.
Yes, what is displayed in the screen, you have to read that. The last slide
What
is
I have, ma'am, is
interest of learners must be
ma'am.
given. Is it visible to
No,
you?
ma'am, it's not there. No.
Okay.
It is not visible, ma'am, so I can't read it. No, ma'am.
Okay, for whomever it is visible, please read. The following general teaching strategies can be followed to make the classroom teaching inclusive. Any one of you for
It's blurred, ma'am. It's blurred again.
Interest of learners
yes, interest of learners.
must be given paramount importance.
Yes.
Learn, acquire, and apply critical knowledge that skills to teach learners. Remain informed of the learner's ability before actual classroom teaching. Any kind of barriers in the physical environment should be removed. Use interactive teaching materials and technologies. Create
Yes.
and distribute accessible learning materials consult psychologist, speech and language pathologist as per need. Uh, Accommodate learners as per their learning needs, provide necessary nurturing motivation and encouragement to all learners, reflect on the teaching practices, why through maintenance of teaching record and feedback, teaching strategies should be aligned with the learner's difficulties.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, these are the teaching strategies which we can follow to make our teaching inclusive, or through which we can make the language classroom inclusive. Interest of the learners should be given importance. Then learn, acquire and apply critical knowledge and skills to teach learners. We should always follow this: learn, acquire and apply the critical knowledge that we all have within ourselves, and the skills that we have gathered through our experience, through reading, through teaching students to teach the learners. Then remain informed of the learners' abilities before actual classroom teaching. Before going to the class, we should know their abilities. Before going to the class, some of you might say that it's not possible. But how we can do that is we can interact with the other teachers who have already taught that particular classroom, and then we can get the basic information of the students or the abilities that the students possesses through interaction with our colleagues who have already taught those students or that particular class. And in terms of difficulties, the barriers in the physical environment should be removed so that everything is available as well as accessible to the learners. Use interactive teaching materials and technologies. This is what you all follow, you all do, which you are doing right now also. Create and distribute accessible learning materials. As I have already said, the materials should be accessible. If it is not in an accessible format, it is only available and not accessible. Then, since it is a language class, so what is required is to consult with psychologists, speech and language pathologists as per need. If required, we should do that as well. Then accommodate learners as per their learning needs. Provide necessary nurturing, motivation and encouragement. What you all have referred to at the very start of the presentation, that motivation, encouragement, because of hesitation, students don't speak in the class. And language class, we all know that there are 4 skills involved: listening, speaking, reading and writing. And this can be attained only with proper motivation, support and encouragement. The last second is to reflect on the teaching practices. That is most important. Whatever we write in our teacher's diary or whatever we write in our lesson plans, we should always check. Maybe after 1 year, we can go back to the previous year and see what we have done in that particular class and how are we improving. We should keep a trace of that. We should reflect on the teaching practices. Maybe we can call one of our colleagues when they are free, when we are teaching, we can take feedback of that particular colleague. And then if he or she provides or suggests something, we can follow that. Then the last one is teaching strategies should be aligned with the learner's difficulties in order to make the teaching and learning in language classroom inclusive. That is what we have discussed in today's class. Our prime goal was to understand, to learn how to create the right condition for our learners. Learners, when there are different learners or different learners with difficulties, different kind of difficulties, be it hearing difficulty, be it locomotor difficulty, vision difficulty, autism, any kind of difficulty, when there are learners with such difficulties and learners with different abilities, how we can create the right conditions for them. That is what was our prime objective of today's discussion. And the broad objective was to how to make the classrooms inclusive. I hope I could make you understand, or I hope that we all understood what are the learner's needs and abilities, and what we should take into account in order to make the classroom inclusive. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you. Now, if you have any question, you can ask. It's open for discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. Can we have quick one or two questions? Please unmute and ask. Yes. If you have any questions, please unmute and ask.
Okay, while people are trying to frame their questions, I just needed to add one observation here. Is that if the student is visually impaired, we need not increase the loudness of our voice while we speak to them. This is a common complaint that I've heard from many of my visually impaired students. It's the only thing that they have a problem with is vision. Their sense of hearing is much better and much more sensitive than people like us who are sighted. So
actually, ma'am, hesitation is there for speaking among the students. So that's why make them comfortable for speaking also. So their voice must be audible. So they never feel any hesitation and fear. Their voice must be
no,
audible.
can you
The
just
student.
rephrase that? I didn't get you. I
Yes.
didn't understand you. Poonam, I didn't understand you.
The question is impaired in the students having not visible or their eyesight is weak, but they fear and they actually hesitate to speak in front of the teacher and in front of their friend also. So we make comfortable environment for and creating environments to for make them to speak loudly in the classroom. So that's why their voice must be audible, and they will speak very confidently and very fluently.
Deepa ma'am, Poonam ma'am is speaking for the learners. She is saying that in
Yes,
order to teach
yes,
properly, their voice should be audible for the teacher.
Yeah. That is something that we can tell them, but then we cannot force it on them because their ears are very sensitive to sound.
Yes, yeah, they
Because
are very
the
sensitive,
whole
but they have hesitation and fearness. Actually,
hesitation and fear, yes, it is the teacher's duty to reduce it.
reduce it.
But when it comes to loudness of voice, I think with them,
Yes.
we need to speak softly, and probably, the proximity that the teacher has with the student, that will really help. Because from the visually impaired perspective, we need to understand that they judge the distance based on the loudness of the voice. So this is something that I did with them. Whenever I had visually impaired students in my classroom, I would wear those anklets which made a lot of noise, so that they knew where I was in the classroom. Because we have about 60 participants, 50, 60 students in the classroom, and it was a huge classroom. And my anklets would make the sound for them, and they would know which part of the classroom or how far away I was from them.
Yes.
Okay, so things like these we can, innovate into the classroom and help the students, and make things accessible and available to them. That's it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Poonam ma'am. Thank you, Shridipa ma'am.
Any other question? If it is not, we are already delayed by 10 minutes. Can we? Okay. I think there are no further questions. So I hope the session has been very useful and will open the eye of the teachers present here as to how we should deal with the learners and what is how different kind of learners are in the class, and we do not focus on universalize things for every learner. We need to certainly cater to the needs of individual learners and know what is good for the class and what is bad for the class. how our learning can be catered to the needs of every learner in the class and bring a sort of uh, uniformity in all the diversity that is there in the class. So we need to certainly be very very careful. The children are very young, very immature, and they need to be dealt very carefully. Otherwise a very wrong notion will go, very bad message they can take, and once young minds are altered, they will not listen to you properly. So it's better that we cater to the needs of every learner very very carefully. So I hope the session must have been very very useful, and the teacher must have taken lesson as to how to deal with the learners needs and how to bring inclusivity in such a classroom. So I'd like to thank both Narji ma'am and Sri Deepa ma'am for Narji ma'am for presenting the whole topic in such a beautiful, detailed, comprehensive manner, and Geeta ma'am for also helping Narji ma'am and in the presentation, and also asking some questions or giving the feedback. Not asking questions, in fact, giving some more inputs as to how that can be made better, how inclusive classroom can be there in the in a classroom, in the teachers, how teachers can make a class very inclusive. So thank you very much ma'am, and I think we'd like to stop here, and we'll meet at
Yes, thank you,
sharp
sir. Thank you,
2:30.
everyone. Thank you, Deepa ma'am. Thank
Thank you
you,
ma'am.
Gita Dure Rajan ma'am.
Geeta ma'am is there? Is ma'am there?
She's not there, but I am thanking her as
Okay.
well, sir.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you
Yes.
both, Deepa ma'am, Narji ma'am, and all who are present here. Thank you very much. We'll meet at 2:30. Bye. Bye.
Bye
Yes, sir.
bye.
Bye. Geeta.
Thank you so much everyone for this wonderful session. Thank you so much.